So Civil Society Consulting, the hosts of today's event, for anyone who's not familiar with us, we're a not-for-profit consultancy, and essentially we want health, equality and social cohesion. And we believe that civil society organisations are the key, particularly grassroots organisations. And we want to support, catalyse and empower the sector by being a reliable source of excellent support that's affordable or free. So we are commissioned by typically medium-sized and larger organisations, and we provide free support to really grassroots organisations in marginalised communities that are led by people from those communities. So we call them kind of by and for organisations. And then a quick overview of 32 Steps. So 32 Steps to Togetherness is a major initiative that we've recently launched as an organisation, which is all about building connections within and between communities. And the genesis story to that is that we, some years ago, we were commissioned by the Campaign to End Loneliness to develop a loneliness learning programme. And we became sort of really aware of loneliness and its impact on health. And many of the grassroots organisations actually that we were working with at the time were making similar observations, you know, at a similar time about the impact of loneliness on their communities. And gradually we came to see the links between, you know, loneliness not just as a health issue, but its impact on society, and the links between loneliness and social fragmentation and intolerance and polarisation, and therefore the impact of loneliness on democracy. So loneliness causes social fragmentation, which affects democratic processes a lot. So just to explain that a bit, I suppose, when you're lonely, some of the symptoms can be withdrawal and distrust, anger and resentment, and therefore widespread loneliness kind of can create the conditions for a divided society, a kind of the conditions where divisive narratives can really thrive. And we're obviously all very familiar with how a divided society impacts our politics and democracy. So when you look at things through this lens, as we have been as a team, you start to see the connection, that connection and are kind of the heart of the solution to almost everything, and sort of certainly every issue that we're working on at Civil Society Consulting under health, equality and cohesion. So with 32 Steps to Togetherness, we've come up with 32 practical actions that we can all get cracking with. But really what we're trying to do is support grassroots organisations that are working with marginalised communities, bringing them together. And we're trying to bring them together in a kind of meta community, and then coalesce a wider community and movement as well. And today's online discussion is one of these activities that we're doing to create that movement. So now to introduce today's discussion topic, which just so happens to be the topic of a PhD that I'm going to be starting in September, which is going to explore how in present day UK we can sort of recreate the community structures of our evolutionary past so that mothers have the social support network they need. And with all the work that we do at Civil Society Consulting, I'm going in with a pretty strong but safe assumption that grassroots organisations are really key in rebuilding connections in communities. So if you're here, you probably know that it's not easy being a parent of young children, and that new and soon-to-be parents and mothers in the UK are being let down, particularly those from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, and particularly those experiencing marginalisation. So there's really high levels of depression and anxiety and loneliness. And that's just plain wrong and cruel, but it's also really nonsensical when you think about how important the first 1,000 days of a child's life are, and then how important parents are to children. Experience for parents, which was 3 years ago. And we were really struck when we were doing this piece of work with the high levels of loneliness, which were underlying a lot of the mental health challenges that we were seeing. And I think Charlotte, who commissioned this research, is on the call. So hello, Charlotte. Thank you for commissioning us back then. It's obviously inspired me a lot. So my background is in evolution, and when you take an evolutionary perspective on these high levels of loneliness, it's really not surprising at all. So humans are cooperative child rearers, and we've spent most of our history as a species not just living in groups, but actually living in communities. So mothers and parents have evolved to depend on and need community a great deal. And I think it's worth really just emphasizing or conveying just how deep in our DNA that need for community is. So humans are very unique in how we reproduce, and without going too much into the detail, as a species, we essentially got cleverer and cleverer, and our brains got bigger and bigger. And to keep getting cleverer and our brains getting bigger, we had to kind of choose between giving birth to babies with very, very big heads, which would mean growing hips, very, very big hips that might end up being quite impractical, or give birth prematurely and let babies' heads grow outside of the body. And in a nutshell, evolutionary forces led us to the second option. And that means that human offspring need a lot of energy and a lot of input for the first few years after birth, and for many years after, maybe up to 30 years thereafter. I feel like someone on the school might joke. But really what the point there is just that we could have never evolved to be the big brained creatures that we are if we didn't bring up our children in communities. So mothers and parents' need for community is really deep in our DNA. And I've broken a few sort of rules in evolutionary anthropology to explain that succinctly there in the interest of time. But I hope the anthropology gods will forgive me. But yeah, so fast forward to the UK in 2024, and we're not living in communities in the same way that we were for most of our evolutionary history. And if you have financial resources, you can essentially, what we observe really happening is that, you know, mothers and parents are able to buy in what community would have given them. So babysitters, therapists, NCT classes, and lots of other really brilliant things that make life a lot easier and make you feel a lot more supported. But if you don't got money, you can't. So when you think about it, you've kind of got more to gain and more to lose from whether there is a sense of community if you're from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background or you're experiencing marginalisation. So there's some real health inequalities there. It's tough across the board, but it's particularly tough for those who are experiencing inequity for other reasons. So what can we do? We can't just go back to living as hunter and gatherers, in these communities that we used to live in, even though I think sometimes that might sound quite appealing. But what we can do is try to understand what it is that community gave mothers and parents of the past, so that we can try and make sure that mothers and parents have those things in today's world. And that's what my research is aiming to do. I want to try and find out what are the active ingredients of a good community of support, and then we can try and look to ensure that mothers and parents can have those things. So to do that, I'm going to be comparing the social networks of mothers in the UK and contemporary hunter-gatherers in Congo, to try and identify what do happy mums in both places have in common. So I'm going to take each individual mother and map her social support network. So who's supporting her? What are they supporting her with? Is it information and advice, or is it hands-on support? And is the support directed to her or her child? And all sorts of other variables as well. And then I'm going to compare the support networks between these two very different populations of mothers. And by the end of all that, I hope to have a list of the ingredients that, sorry, I keep doing this, but the ingredients that mothers need for, that they need their social support network to contain in order for them to thrive. So this whole idea is motivated, or I've been motivated initially by a desire to really support and enhance the work that's being done by community-led organisations that are supporting mothers and parents already, like some of those that are on the panel today. And these organisations are already doing a really exceptional job of providing many of the things that communities of support provided our ancestors, and namely bringing mothers and parents together so that they can connect and support each other. And my dream is that this list of active ingredients can become a kind of toolkit to help those grassroots organisations be even more impactful, and we might learn things that mean they want to make small tweaks and changes to have even more impact, but also to validate all of the work that they're already doing to funders and the statutory health system with this kind of backup theory. And to just explain why this approach a little bit more, when you look around the world and back in time, there are many, many different ways that child rearing systems can look and have looked, and mothers get support in different ways from different people in different places. So there's a really amazing example in Tibet where grandfathers have a really important role to play, and there's all sorts of cultural practices in place which mean they spend a lot of time with new children. And then in many hunter-gatherer communities where older siblings or older women in the community play a really, really key role. And you might all be thinking of examples that you know about. I can see Gabriella is in the chat, so look forward to having a look at that afterwards. But basically, what good looks like on the surface, it's really hard to know what good is if you just look at what's on the surface. But by comparing mothers in two very different places, that's how you can get to the active ingredients, rather than end up with a kind of very culturally specific or fixed idea of what good looks like. And I think the best way to explain this is through analogy. So when you think of your 5 a day, 5 fruit and vegetables a day, you need a certain quantity and variation of fruit and veg and fibre. And it doesn't really matter whether you're getting that through having lots of parsnips and raspberries or cabbages and oranges. What really matters is that you're getting B12 and vitamin C and all of the other things that you need. And what probably makes most sense is for you to eat the fruit and veg that you like and that you have access to easily. And I'll eat all the fruit and veg that I like, which is parsnips and raspberries, and that I have access to easily. And in a similar vein, this toolkit won't be a prescriptive recipe for sort of being bossy and telling grassroots organisations what to do. Different communities, communities up in Hartlepool, with a high proportion of single mothers who are thinking about having community childcare, can look at what they've got in their community, what assets they've got easy access to make sure that initiative is a success. And similarly, Muslim mothers in Tower Hamlets, might look at different things that they already do because of the local mosque, or certain things that are happening in their areas, and they can take those strengths and ride with them. And I just think that's quite an important aspect of this. So one last thing to say is just about the knock-on effects of building connections and communities for parents. So I believe that this research is kind of extra exciting because as much as mothers and parents need community for themselves, they're also an incredible entry point for creating community for everyone, and that the sense of community that we're all missing. And I think one of the many things that struck me when we were speaking to mothers and primary caregivers in South East London through the research that I mentioned before, was just that when people have children, they have this impetus and energy to create new connections, and whether sometimes that sadly comes out of need and kind of desperation, but also because children provide this excuse and common ground to come together. So I don't have specific evidence from that, so it'd be interesting to hear if people have any anecdotes that they'll share in the discussion. But if you're kind of willing to take my word from it, what that means is that by supporting parents to build the communities of support that they need, we can actually also create like a long-term solution to the loneliness epidemic that is currently affecting all people of all ages and stages, because kind of a wider community can coalesce around the community that parents are building, and also because the next generation will grow up more connected to one another. So that's I'm going to remove my spotlight so I can see all of your lovely faces. That's kind of the theory behind today's discussion, and we've got Nikhil, Zainab, Nat, Judith and Roshni and Anya to provide their expertise, and all of you to also share your expertise too. So we'll start with Nikhil. Where are you? Who's actually the supervisor of my research, and we're working on a project in Kent with the NHS in Kent and Medway to raise perinatal women's awareness of this kind of mismatch between the conditions that we evolved in and the conditions that they find themselves rearing their children in. So I can't see you, Nikhil, but I trust that you haven't disappeared. Yes. We'll pin you, and then could you tell us a bit about you and what you study and this project?
Sure. Really great introduction, and here I'm very excited. We haven't spoken about your project in a while, and hearing you talk about it again, I can't wait to have you in October. So I am an evolutionary anthropologist, and basically, similar to what Natasha's outlined, broadly speaking, I try and understand human behavior from an evolutionary perspective. And more recently, I've been focusing on how we can understand our vulnerability to mental illness from an evolutionary perspective. So the way I got interested, and the reason I think perinatal mental health is so important, I actually initially was just studying social behavior and trying to understand why humans are cooperative. A lot of the time when people think about evolution, they think like survival of the fittest, we should all be selfish. How has it ended up that we're so cooperative and altruistic? And that was broadly the question I was focused on trying to understand. And in my PhD, I spent a lot of time with hunter-gatherers too. I'm not sure whether you covered this or not, Natasha, but because that's the way we lived for the vast, vast majority of our evolutionary history, like 98%, it was only very recently we started farming, and then super recently that we started living in these market economies. So because that is the way we lived for the majority of our evolutionary history, studying those populations who still live that way of life can help us understand the sort of social and environmental forces that have shaped our brain and our psychology. So I was just interested in understanding why we're so cooperative. And as Natasha mentioned, child rearing was one aspect and is one aspect in contemporary hunter-gatherers, which is super cooperative. So I was focusing on that. And I did this really soul-destroying work where I would pick a focal child and I'd have a headphone in, and the audio would say observe, and I'd observe for 20 seconds and then record. So then for the next 10 seconds, I write down everything I saw. And then I do this for 12 hours for each child, and then do this for like 20 hours. And despite all of that work, I didn't end up using that data in my PhD at all. So, I mean, that was literally probably like 250 hours of work. But then a few years ago, I wanted to apply evolutionary thinking to this question of our vulnerability to mental illness. Like, why hasn't evolution and natural selection kicked that out? And I started working with the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And one of the child psychiatrists I worked with saw the data I'd collected where these kids effectively had like 15 to 20 caregivers, more than often, 50% of their care was coming from people other than parents. And she was like, wow, this is so different. We should definitely work on this. And she was telling me about how in her experience as a psychiatrist, she's aware that so many mothers have this misconception. Well, in popular culture, in culture generally, we have this misconception that mothers have these maternal instincts and as such should know how to do everything, should be able to manage motherhood alone. Also, attachment parenting has become very popular, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a slight misconception in how attachment parenting has gone into popular culture, that a child should just have one primary caregiver, which again, all of these ideas are completely at odds with what we know from evolutionary anthropology and hunter-gatherer work. So when she was telling me about the guilt mothers with postnatal depression feel and the inadequacy they feel, and that they think something's wrong with them just because they're struggling with motherhood, we decided to do this project, which Natasha's helping us with a lot now, which is basically with mothers with lived experience of postnatal depression, we're creating this information leaflet, which will hopefully help communicate, hopefully help to rebuttal these really false narratives that mothers should be able to do everything alone, and that's what's the natural way of caregiving, and actually give some information about our evolutionary history and about how cooperative caregiving is in other cultures, with the hope that it can help to reduce guilt and also encourage help seeking, because a lot of work is showing that mothers who are struggling, they feel this guilt and inadequacy, and therefore they don't seek help because they're so ashamed. And of course, they shouldn't be feeling ashamed. And from an evolutionary perspective, we're not surprised at all that they're finding things hard. So we're hoping this leaflet we're creating can help mothers and help reduce that guilt a bit. Say, look, there's nothing wrong. This isn't unnatural at all that you're struggling, and you should be seeking support. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Nikhil. That is so interesting. Obviously, you know my thoughts on that. I don't know if anyone has any more questions. I kind of planned it so that we'd go through all the speakers and then have all questions in a big old discussion at the end. So hold on to your questions and we'll come back to them. And now we'll come on to Zainab. So I've lost my notes.
Hi.
Hey. So Zainab is from the Lantern Initiative, which is a Muslim mental health charity based in Peterborough, but also across Leicester now. It's really grown. And it's an organisation that we supported some years ago through the free support that we give to grassroots organisations. And they've got a really wonderful example of a community-led project focused on supporting perinatal women. So over to you, Zainab.
Hi everyone. That was really interesting, Nicole, because actually our project tried to address that loneliness and that shame and try and connect mothers together. And I'll start to talk about it. If I start sniffing, I'm just a little bit ill. But yeah, we partnered up with CPSL Mind on a perinatal project called Connecting Moms. They had already been doing a Connecting Moms project since 2013. But we found that over the years, they had over 400 women attend these courses, but only 7 were Muslim. So it's very low. And Peterborough has a very large Muslim population, so something's not working there, something's missing. So we needed to address that. And being a Muslim organization, we already had links to Muslim women in the community. Since we work with them regularly, we see them regularly. They're the ones who attend our events the most. And we know they struggle too, on top of discrimination and stigma. So there's something that they need access to help, and we were trying to address that. So we partnered up with CPSL to address that need. So it was a 6-week course over, I think, 1.5 years, or 2 years, so a long time. And we incorporated, we tried to make it culturally sensitive and faith-based. Each week was based on like a way to well-being, and I'm not sure if anyone's heard of what they are, but you've got the 5 ways are like connect and give and learn, be active, and there's one more I can't remember. But we basically incorporated Islam into that. So we'd talk about God's names and Islamic stories. We talk about we do Islamic meditations at the end, and we just root everything in faith. Take notice. Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, that's helpful. So yeah, we would do that, and we do obviously feedback forms and see how everyone's doing along the way as well, to check in to see how their well-being was at the beginning versus at the end. And we noticed that there was a positive shift. And from to be sort of more specific, I've got my stats here. We had 65 mums take part, and we found that 88% of the women wanted to join simply to connect. So they had no other objective other than to connect. And a lot of these mums I had met myself were had just moved to Peterborough, and they didn't know anybody else that had either just moved or were Muslim mums that were going through what they were going through. So they just needed to know that they just wanted to know someone felt the same way as them. And then we found that at the end of the courses, that the three things they valued the most were connection, the focus on Muslim women, and the content, that it was faith-based and it was rooted in faith. And we found that 100% of them said they, after this course, they could now introduce self-care practices, which is perfect, which is what we wanted. They felt that actually they could introduce something new into their lives to manage the difficulties they're experiencing after giving birth, which is what we wanted. So one example of a mum that I met, Pfizer, we have a story of her in the report. She had a big family, but no immediate family around her, but she had in-laws, and there were a lot of them. She moved in, she had 2 children, and she was really, really struggling with having just given birth to her second child. And she was feeling super overwhelmed. So she joined Connecting Mums to alleviate some of that overwhelm and talk to us. And she found that she realized that she put a lot of pressure on herself to be perfect and to have everything together. But she realized that after talking to these other women, that she needs other women to cope. So she first took the pressure off herself to be perfect, and she joined groups. She connected with the mums afterwards, joined these chats, and then she sought support with us afterwards as well, with Lantern specifically. Yeah, that it was great. She just a positive effect on her mental health, and it was amazing, which is what we wanted. And yeah, that's us in a sort of nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Yeah, it's just brilliant to hear, like such a glorious example of like everything that we're talking about and dreaming about in action. So thank you so much. Yeah, again, I'm going to whiz through because of time. Well, we're not too bad on time, but we'll save questions for afterwards. So hold the questions in your mind, or jot them in the chat so that we know that they're there. And now Matt from Proud to Be Parents. Yeah, similarly, Matt runs an organization that we've supported in the past. Sorry, I've lost my notes. Oops. Yeah, Proud to Be Parents. I mean, it'd be great if you could tell us the story of your organization, Matt, and your kind of thoughts on everything that we've talked about so far.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, my name's Matt. I'm the founder and managing director of Proud to Be Parents, which is now an award-winning organisation because we recently received a Community Initiative Award by the British LGBT Awards. And so our organisation is there to support LGBT plus parents and carers to be, LGBT plus parents and carers and their children. We've been delivering services for over 18 years now. And way back when, it was due to lack of visibility, the need for inclusive provision, as well as obviously community isolation. After completing my master's, I used that research to develop the organisation into a CIC and for its first funding applications. And over the years, the organisation has grown and developed. But the needs of our community are still what they were, sadly, over 18 years ago, which is because of the underrepresentation, lack of visibility and acknowledgement with statutory services, media, policy, health provision, education, and the likes. So many of our LGBT plus families lack also extended family support due to past traumas or abandonment. And our services are therefore there to bring the community together to gain peer support and and share relevant experiences. So we offer a variety of different services to meet that needs. And they're obviously deep rooted with inclusivity, community engagement and collaboration, ensuring that the unique needs of our community are effectively met. So we do that by hopefully combating isolation, so bringing our community together. That's one of our primary objectives, to alleviate the sense of isolation often experienced by LGBT plus families. Through our programs and initiatives, we create safe spaces where families can connect, share experiences, build supportive relationships with each other, so that they can also have that greater understanding of each other's journey. We, of course, therefore raise visibility and awareness. So we actively work to increase visibility of LGBT plus families within society. We advocate for awareness and understanding of the challenges faced by a community by striving for equity. One of those key projects is that we just released is that we are developing an awareness day on the 19th of September, which will be called LGBT plus Parents and Carers Day. The reason for that date on the 19th of September is that in 1976, a feminist magazine was looking for a researcher to look at the relationship between lesbian mothers and their children, because at that point, courts and custody battles were not allowing mothers to have access to their children because they were leaving heterosexual relationships to form lesbian relationships when they realized their sexual orientation, and courts felt like they were not appropriate relationships to be around children. And so therefore courts were deciding that the mothers couldn't see their children. And so a researcher was found and obviously proved that lesbian women, bisexual women were appropriate adults, were able to form appropriate relationships with their children. And that research has grown and developed over the last 30 to nearly 40 years, ensuring that our community can go on to have children and have overturned quite a lot of policy in terms of adoption and fostering and the likes as well. So that's why we have this awareness day. And again, it therefore creates greater visibility and awareness. And we also work towards education and advocacy. So we're committed to educating both the LGBT plus community and the broader society about routes to parenthood and the specific needs and issues that are faced by our community to develop that broader understanding. And obviously around community engagement, so Proud to be Parents actively engages with the community through outreach programs, events, collaboration and activity to allow our community to come together, to develop that greater understanding, but also to have time where they can share their experiences and build robust support networks. So I know we've got a bit of time, so that's a quick whistle whip through what we do.
Yeah, and what you do is amazing. That I'm really excited for you that you've got an awareness day, and you can definitely count on our support to amplify it, and hopefully some of the people on this call. So maybe if there's a link you can drop in the chat, please do, and then we can all have a reunion on LGBT Parents Day. And I suppose what I'm hoping my research will have some implications for is, I guess it's part of a kind of general movement towards opening our minds as to what children need and what parenting can look like, because in Western culture there's a real emphasis on the mother and child attachment, and actually in our evolutionary history, as Nikhil set out really well, there's so many different caregivers who have a really important role to play, and therefore you can have everything you need and it can look quite different. So on to Apples and Honey Nightingale, which is the first nursery in a care home in the UK, and so it's kind of an intergenerational nursery, and I didn't get to mention that actually in the end of my introduction, but kind of expecting that to be one of the potentially a key theme, so or sort of ingredient, is that communities of our evolutionary past have people of lots of different ages, and lots of peer networks of people of the same age in the UK, and there's so much to be gained from intergenerational work. So I will let Judith explain that, and then we've got Roshni, who's a parent whose child goes to the nursery, who are going to share. So Judith, I think you're going to give us a whistle-stop explanation of Apples and Honey, and then Roshni, we're looking to hear your experience as a parent.
Thank you. I'll do my best to keep it short, and I might just stop talking because there's so much to say. Basically, myself, I'm a first generation British. My parents came after the war as refugees to Manchester, and we didn't have a support network, and I never had grandparents myself. So it wasn't an extended family experience. And when I had my own children and I saw the relationship that they had with their grandparents, it suddenly I realized how important that is. And when I opened an early years setting back in the 1990s, it was very important to me that during that, as part of our curriculum, we should actually have the relationships, that we should be mixing with all age groups, because otherwise it's not holistic, it's not fair on the children, many of whom's parents didn't live in the same country or lived far away because people have to relocate for work. As part of this, we created a relationship with Nightingale House, which is how we got our name, Apples and Honey Nightingale. Anyway, I have to be very quick. And that was, and we asked them if we could actually open in the grounds of their home so that we could have these relationships every day, because I could see the impact of bringing the children and the grandfriends together. And so we opened it. We opened it knowing also that 20% of our places would be reserved for the children of the care staff, so that then that would help with the retention and recruitment, and also the bonding of the relationship between the care staff and the children and the clients, the grandfriends, as we call them. We were very lucky. People believed in us. Roshni was one of our very first parents. He works at the care staff and at the care home, and I'm going to hand over to her. And I'm sorry, I've already overrun.
No, you've done a wonderful job. Sorry to put pressure on you to be quick. I think it's so good to hear the story. Roshni, where are you? Can you give us a wave?
I'm here. Natasha, like I said, I'm still at work and I have my residents coming in and, trying to chat with me. So that's why I had to switch my camera. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. We can go into kind of radio podcast mode.
Sorry about that, everybody. Good morning. My name is Roshni. I'm an employee of Nightingale Hammerson Jewish Care Home, where Apples and Honey Nursery is situated. When I joined the organization, the nursery was not built then. And I know Judith remembers this very well. So when I heard about the news of the nursery being opened inside the care home, I would say the excitement was from both ways. One, as a parent, because the employees were given this opportunity to book a place in the nursery for your child. And the second one was from a work perspective, which was a unique experience, I would say, to support the intergenerational project. I live with a family of three, me, my husband, and my daughter, with no elderly person in the house. And from the culture that I come, I always had this worry at the back of my head if my child would be able to maintain a healthy bond with her grandparents who live back home in India. So the visiting was only once a year, where, usually families would go in the term break and all that. So that was always a worry, saying, how would I build that relationship? But having my daughter join Apples and Honey Nursery, I would say my worries were eased off, because we knew that Apples and Honey Nursery would give my daughter a very unique experience that she would not have received from other nurseries outside. So my daughter joined the nursery at the age of 2 years in 2018. And during her time in the nursery, I would say my daughter was able to experience and participate in the Jewish culture activities, which she proudly shares her experiences even today in a school cultural events. And as a parent, I feel that she was able to engage and learn about cultural differences at that early age, and which I think has enabled her to promote the interactional skills. Having that opportunity to engage in activities with the elderly residents of the care home, I would say, also exposed my daughter to learn about respecting elders. She got to learn new skills and build that confidence. She joined in some classes like French classes, which were led by the residents of the care home, arts, baking, beekeeping, and, there were numerous activities at that time. I believe that this experience promoted my child to build collaborative relationships while engaging with the older people and other age group, which I don't think is accessible to all the nurseries out there. And my daughter today is 8 years old, and she still looks forward returning to the nursery during her half-term holidays. And I cannot explain how wonderful it is to see her excitement to be back to the home, to the nursery, and nurture that relationship with both the teachers, residents, and other team members of the organization. I would like to add this, that one of the mission of Nightingale Hammerson Care Home is building relationship-centered care. And I think by having Apples and Honey Nursery on the site, we definitely have evidence-based practices on what we preach. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roshni. Yeah, I think that captures it really well. And I struggle to articulate when I think about why mixed ages is so important, but I just often find myself giving the example of, like, if you picture having a birthday party or a wedding where you've got people of different ages, it kind of brings out the best in everyone, doesn't it? Like, older people are on a slightly different vibe and younger people slightly on best behavior, and it's just, there's something that we just intuitively know so good about it. So Anya, thank you so much for joining us. Anya is a local politician in Hackney. And yeah, I mean, you can maybe introduce yourself, because I thought one of the things that'd be lovely to hear about is your journey into your current role and why you've developed such a passion for perinatal mental health, among other passions.
Yeah, among many other passions.
Yeah.
I guess I'm here today with both of my hats on, which is I currently work very much in the world of politics. I'm a local politician, local councillor. Last year I was civic mayor of Hackney. I'm on the exec for the Fabian Women's Network, who are fantastic. And I currently work as democracy lead for an organisation called Compassion in Politics. But before we came on today, we were talking about what brings people into politics anyway. And I'm a big believer that if we have a natural passion, natural focus in our life anyway, perhaps we've worked in a sector, to bring that into politics and use politics as the vehicle rather than politics in and of itself, I think is a really, really powerful thing to do. So my background is in women's health and specifically fertility. This came out of my husband and myself going through 6 years of fertility issues, IVF treatments, and we were very fortunate to have our two first children through IVF, and then we went on to adopt as well. So I know the absolute value of everything that you've been talking about this morning in terms of the absolute need for community, and that we're not designed to do any of this ourselves. So I put in the chat earlier, I love that concept of being a good enough parent. And I love this concept of actually we're designed for community rather than how society at the moment seems to elevate it, which is that we're meant to have all the answers ourselves as parents. And in the world of fertility and in the world of adoption, that's perhaps more acute than ever, and than in many other places, because we really aren't designed to do this on our own. When I worked in the fertility sector, and I've worked for nearly 2 decades in fertility, I have run support groups, for example, over the years, and the value of that shared community, of that relief of seeing people walk into a room and realise they're not alone, is absolutely immense. Some of the statistics that we've seen over the years around the value of community with fertility, 90% of people with long-term fertility struggles do experience depression at some point, and 42% of that group experience at some point suicidal tendencies. So fertility struggles really can cut to the heart of who we are and how we see each other, see ourselves. And because of that, it's really vital that we have that wraparound support, that community holding each other up. And adoption is, again, a really, really key area where we feel like adoptive parents, we're often called super mums, super dads, and it's sort of this throwaway thing of, oh, you're so amazing, well done for what you're doing. But actually, although that's a lovely sentence and meant really well, again, what it can do is force all of the onus back on that individual to have all the answers. And I can 100% tell you, as an adoptive parent, I really, really don't have all the answers. And it's been a real growth these last 10 years since we adopted our son, of realizing that actually, not only do I not have all the answers, but actually that's a good thing. It's more than okay. It's a good thing. We're meant to be doing it in an interconnected way. So my lived experience with fertility, with adoption, my work in the fertility sector, being an advocate, being a patient representative, a voice in the media for people going through fertility struggles, over the years has really shaped my work in politics as well. And so anything that I do now in politics will have that thread running through it. It's not just politics in and of itself and for its own sake, but it's to elevate the voice of the person going through fertility struggles. It's to elevate the voice of the adoptive family on the verge of breakdown. It's to elevate the voice of those struggling with perinatal mental health issues. Some of the work that I did over the years was with the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, and looking at the impact of going through fertility struggles onto the experience of being new parents. And so, you know, that there's a real interconnectedness that we need to analyse and support when people have come through a real struggle to become parents into actually finally achieving whatever that means, parenthood. So a lot of my work in the fertility sector was about, again, supporting and amplifying that group of people. So I'm really passionate about both fields, both sectors, and it's just wonderful to be in a group of like-minded people that are looking at the value of community, not as an add-on, but as an absolute core essential. So you will have my support, Natasha, going forward, no matter what. And
Yeah.
I could talk for hours, so I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, we've all got that in common, haven't we? No, you've done an amazing job of keeping it succinct, because also remembered as you're speaking that you've written a whole book.
Yes.
That I've not explored yet. So yeah, no, you're quite the opposite. Bravo. So well, yeah, I if we could unpin Anya, and if as many people that are comfortable putting their videos on could put their videos on, because it's lovely to know who's in the room. But yeah, questions and reflections. A lot of the people in the room are kind of experts who are doing their own work on this. So it would be really lovely to hear about, you know, activities and initiatives that you've worked on, that you've seen that build connections really well in your experience, or yeah, any questions. I feel like there's always a little awkward pause at first whilst you all think of your questions. So, oh no, we've got one already.
I've got a question. Were you pointing at me? I can't remember how to put the hand up on Zoom.
Yeah, it was you.
I wanted to. I was so excited to hear about the Apples and Honey Nightingale Nursery, and it's something that the psychiatrists I work with and I've been talking about a lot, that it'd be so great if this happened. And we knew in Germany there were some places. I was just wondering how common these are in the UK. Is Apples and Honey sort of quite unique in this respect, or I presume you guys know whether there are many other nurseries like this?
We were the first to open with our particular purpose of bringing the generations together. And just to say that since Roshni started, we have actually expanded, and we actually take children from 3 months upwards, so that people who were working in the care home, actually, if they needed to come back to work early, they would be able to, so that they didn't have to take such gaps, and we would be available. But another one has opened in Chester called the Nursery in Belong, and there are more co-located nurseries that are in the planning area, and there's one that's just opened in Scotland. I think this is definitely the way forward. It's something we should be doing more. And what we've also done is we've actually opened an education and training centre, and we have the first accredited level 3 qualifications in intergenerational practice, because it's not enough just to come together and to sing at somebody. You want to sing with them. You want to do it. It's not performance. It's really important that neither side should be a tool for the other, but there should be reciprocity, and that we can make the best of all our intergenerational interactions. So I'm going to put the our link on the chat if anybody wants to know more. And we love having visitors, and we do share what we do. We're a not-for-profit as well.
I think there are a few springing up, actually. One of the women who really sadly, I think she's looking forward to watching the recording, but couldn't be with us today, runs something similar, not a nursery, but bringing together older people in a care home.
There are many intergenerational organisations. In Hackney, I think you've already, as you were saying, we've got Magic Me, and in Common, in Bradford, the Linking Network, and Scotland has an amazing support network, Generations Working Together. If you just look up intergenerational, you'll find there are a lot of organisations, and more housing developments are looking at how they can create intergenerational friendly building developments. And so if you look at something called Housing Lin, which is LIN, you'll read a lot more about that. It's a fantastic field, and fortunately it's growing. We just need to get a little bit more policy awareness that people will actually encourage more of it.
Amazing. When I talk, I always get asked whenever I'm like doing an interview, oh, well, what are the solutions to all these problems? And I'm always like, I don't really know. We've got a bit of a problem, but this would be great. And now I have somewhere to direct people to look up at the amazing stuff you guys are doing.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Can I just come in and make a couple of points, Natasha?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think there's some comments in there from Isabella about, you know, fathers and where are they and do they matter?
For context, Mark is my father.
And I was really sort of exercised by this at the end of the last century, and I was working for the Lloyds Bank Foundation, which many of you I think will know as a funder, and we got very involved in supporting fatherhood groups, and there was an organization called Fathers Direct. It's now become Fatherhood Institute, but there isn't as much work around that, you know, about you know, what the role of fathers are in terms of supporting. I mean, Steve Bidoff has done some really good books that people might know about raising sons and raising daughters. Actually, he's written a number of different things, but I think it is something that's kind of out of the equation, really, to some extent. You know, how fathers need to be looking after mothers and what their role is in parenting and where that sits. And I suppose my big concern as I'm reaching the age I'm reaching is, what does that now mean within the UK, where a lot of people are not having children? You know, they're taking decisions that they're not going to have children for a number of reasons, and we could discuss that in more detail. But you know, we do need there to be children, because you know, the economy, everything requires there to be children, and it's slightly gone out of fashion. The demographics are really poor on this. We're organising, and I'll put it in the chat, we're organising with Paul Morland to come and talk about his latest book about these issues. But I think I would suggest that the whole issue around fatherhood and the role of fathers really needs to be part of the equation here going forward, because they really need to be there, and they really need to be supporting women in having children, or supporting their partners, their other, you know, in civil marriages and all this sort of thing. They need to be there and engaged, supporting people, so that we have a society going forward, because otherwise demographics are going to fall through the floor in the UK, and I think that will have serious implications for us all.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark, for making that point about dads, because well, it feels only right, but also, yeah, I think as I'm a bit of a newbie in this space, but I think there's sadly, you know, there's a lot of mothers who are bringing up children on their own without support from the father, and then dads then can sadly kind of get forgotten at times in some of the conversations. Nicole, I'm really happy to see your hand up, because where's it gone? Put it back. But yeah, because I've been kind of admiring your work from afar. B3 bumps beginnings. Yeah, please.
Bumps, birth and belonging.
Bumps, birth and belonging. B3.
Yeah,
It'd be really lovely. Well, if you've got a question or whatever you've got to say, please come in.
Well, a bit of both. I'm really loving this conversation, by the way. It's just brilliant. And especially as my background is in midwifery. I'm a midwife by profession, turned birth worker. And, you know, hearing everything that's been going on back in this conversation, you know, my feeling in terms of community does begin with birth and birth being a community and a family event is something that I love, and it's something that I've seen, it's something that I advocate for, and it's something that I think is really missing as well, you know, in the equation of things. So, you know, so B3, so what we do, we actually, we target Afro-Caribbean families in the perinatal period, so the first 1,001 days. And what we do is that we provide peer support. At the moment, we have 3 groups per month, which is at the moment we are attracting about 17 to 18 women every single group that we have. And some of them are now pregnant again. And we're moving towards a model where we are doing outreach work and providing one-to-one support for those mums who can't access the groups and need that support. And then hopefully try to get them within the community that we're growing, growing so organically and growing really quite beautifully. Actually, it's been a really great experience.
I feel like grassroots organizations so often do, because they've evolved because of a genuine need and in a really authentic way. So then once they start going, they like Proud to Be Parents as well, you know, really similar story.
Yeah, we just keep on growing, and it's just beautiful to see, and it's beautiful that the communities, I'm loving the support that they're giving each other. So, you know, this conversation is so apt for exactly what we're doing and where we're striving to move forward to in the future. But just talking about fathers, there is a foundation called the Prepare Foundation, I believe it is, and that's something, you know, in the future we're looking at having more dads groups, so peer support groups for dads as well. But we want it to be for them, by them, you know, not us saying this is what we think you should be doing. We want, so, you know, the mums that we've got now, we're talking to their partners and seeing what we can create together, you know, with them that they will enjoy. And the Prepare Foundation has a really, really great, a great graphic that just shows how dads can be more involved from the beginning, you know, from pregnancy onwards and in the perinatal period. So that's something that we're using as a bit of a foundation for our dad's part. But that's us in a nutshell. We're based in Essex. We're based in Thurrock, Essex, and we should be moving a bit further shortly.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much. I was just trying to Google that graphic that you've mentioned, but if you happen to have easy access to it, maybe pop it in the chat and others.
I can try.
But thank you so much, Nicole. Such great work, and it's so good to hear that it's growing and going well. So I thought we could do Gabriella, then Isabella, and then Marie. Because you weren't able to put up your hand, but
no, I couldn't find the buttons anywhere there. I pressed all the little bits, but it's just such a fruitful chat. I love these kind of conversations, and I'm just going to speak from my own personal experience because, like Anya, we all end up doing our jobs because of the life that we had before, and I was unfortunately hit with disability about 13 years ago, and ended up having being diagnosed with MS, and very much like you said, Natasha, in the beginning, the isolation hit in, and I just withdrew from society, became very resentful, and sort of sat there at 33 thinking, well, this is it for me. And then I ended up having 2 more children in that period, and faced personally the sort of, not only, you know, the accessibility to issues to some of these groups, but, you know, the sort of deep-rooted resentment stuff. And I found a parenting class called with EPEC, who I now volunteer parent group leader for now, and I have been for the last sort of 7 years. And it really gave me that confidence to sort of, because I have 3 children. I had an 8-year-old before I got disabled, and I went through the course, met loads of other parents online. It was during it was after COVID period, and everyone was there. And then from there, I ended up going into a food club, and I ended up getting my job initially for Family Action through the food club and being a coordinator for food clubs in Nottinghamshire before we lost the contract, all of which are remaining, by the way. They're all grassroots organisations remaining in the communities in Notts, so we help them all to stay. And I just can't tell you the support that food clubs offer within communities, on every single level, to every single demographic, whether it's a new mum, whether it's an elderly person, whether it's disabled person. If only every community could have a food club to sort of bolster their the unit, would be amazing. Because I know for me personally, it's been my growth, a bit like Anya was saying, my growth out of disability into work, into being a ferocious campaigner now for families, and looking at all the services that we need and desperately need within our communities. And I went to Wellingborough. We've got a family group in Wellingborough for mums, new mums, and I met a few of the dads that came along, and they were saying the same thing. We've got a serious disempowerment issue with fathers. They don't, even down to the name, mums and tums or mums and bumps. Lots of these dads don't feel like they can actually attend. But we've met a few of the dads now who, I think the mums have gone back to work and they still want to bring their toddlers along to the group. So they come along every week, and there's a big force growing. So hopefully can raise the profile of these dads and get more and more groups, and hopefully a few groups set up by dads. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But yeah.
There's one called Dope Black Dads on Instagram. I got really excited about it before, but it's actually in America, I think. But yeah.
It would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriella.
Yeah.
Isabella, I think, yes, let's come to you.
Yeah,
Love
thanks so
to
much,
see,
Natasha.
by the way,
Thanks so much for
in your
bringing.
yurts.
Yes, it's very off-grid, so I'm just hoping that there's enough electricity to hold up this call. But thanks so much for bringing such a diverse set of speakers together, and it's like so amazing to learn about all these different initiatives, and really encouraging as well. I haven't actually reached parenthood yet, but looking forward to it. And this whole conversation is really how I've perceived it to be almost questioning the single parent sort of model versus you can actually raise children in the community, and then it just kind of taking gender out of it, because of course you can be a single dad, and there's actually usually a lot of maybe potentially shame or labels put, or like sort of sympathy given to single parents. So I feel like this is probably really showing that actually you can be extremely empowered and supported as a single parent. And then it just makes me think, when you're bringing your anthropological research background into this, and how examples in nature and animals, they're raising offspring and in these big groups, then it just makes me think, as humans, then where did this family unit of mum, dad, daughter, son come from? I'm starting to think about maybe like Mao in China and during that whole phase, and then just tracking that through. And obviously religion is a big part of it, different cultures and communities, obviously in the Middle East, maybe, where you can have multiple wives.
The economic system.
Which one?
The economic system is a big part of it as well, right? Like trying to kind of sell this idea of nuclear families. Which I know, I know that you'll be very more knowledgeable than me about, but I think that historically, I think that's a big
right. So these are all modern self-imposed human or society economical structures, basically, on what's something that should be a very natural social thing. You wouldn't
have a nuclear family surviving very well on their own in a cave somewhere, kind of thing.
No, it's brilliant. I think it's really encouraging, and I think anyone who wants to adopt and raise a child as their own, on their own, or all these things, it's it just opens up people's eyes, I think, to what's actually possible.
Yeah, thank you so much, Isabella. I completely agree with you, and I'm really glad that you've experienced that and had thought that and shared it with everybody as well. And now, Marie, I've lost you. Are you? Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hi everyone, I'm Mari. It's really good to see everybody. It's okay, Natasha. It's a common mistake, honestly. I get Marie all the time. It's just so good to be part of this discussion. I don't know how much all of you know about Best Beginnings and the work we do and our Baby Buddy app, but all this discussion really made me think of community and our role in fostering community, especially with obviously the world is getting increasingly more technological, and obviously our main offer is an app, but kind of I'm thinking and reflecting on what our role is with all these different nuances in fostering that community, and in helping parents feel closer together through all the alienating experiences and all the positive experiences as well that they have through pregnancy, parenthood, conception, fertility struggles, all of the above. And actually, I raised my hand at the time we were talking about fathers and their role, because we actually partnered with the Fatherhood Institute and Future Men and Music Football Fatherhood and Dadvegans, so a big group of father-specific charities to create a specific pathway for dads, because we identified that dads are not being included in conversation, they're not being included in those support groups, etc., and we really wanted them to be able to have a space where they're getting really NHS aligned, evidence-based information, where they're not feeling like they're just, you know, the second or the third wheel in the parenthood, or the fourth wheel sometimes in the parenthood experience. So it does make me feel a little bit hopeful that there are spaces like that, like the Baby Buddy app that we obviously work on, but obviously that there are all these other charities, and that even all of you are thinking about the roles of dads and the roles of community and supporting them, and in supporting obviously mothers as well, but supporting families in general. Like I said, I really think about how we can get people to feel supported in whatever way works for them. And I think that's what Charlotte was saying in the chat as well. Families are smaller, geographically separate, so how can we reach them? How can we make sure that they're getting A, the information that they need, but B, they also have a space where they can explore all these different struggles and nuances that they're going through. But yeah, if you ever want to find out anything about Baby Buddy, etc., please do get in touch with me or visit our website. And yeah, it's just so good to see that this conversation is being had more and more.
Well,
we need to talk more about it. Yeah,
conversation too. But yeah, I think I was just feeling as we were talking that this kind of idea, the digital angle, had been left out. So I'm really glad that we got to hear from you, even though it's just a bit brief, to briefly cover that. Does anyone have any more questions? We've got sort of 4 minutes left. I'm happy to stay on the call a bit longer, and other people might too, if you have certain people that you want to talk to. But yeah, maybe one more question or comment or story from the group.
If no one's got a question, can I just ask what the Baby Buddy app sort of does? Like what happens on the app?
Yeah, I'm happy to share super briefly what it is, but I really encourage you to download it and play around with it, because that's really the way to understand what we do and what's in it. But it's a free to download, ad-free app that is completely NHS aligned, completely evidence-based, and it gives you all kinds of information, advice, daily tips. It's got videos from healthcare professionals as well as from families, just like your own or whoever is using the app. And our goal has always been to help parents and families and caregivers give their children the best start in life by providing them with the tools and the knowledge and the confidence to do that. So we support parents all the way from conception all the way to the child's first birthday, and don't tell anybody, but we're working on expanding that offer. to even more years in the child's life, but we're not quite there yet. And like I said, we have pathways. If you are a mother, if you are a father, we are working on a LGBTQ plus dads pathway as well, which I think is going to be really important. Dads and mums, where we're also working with lesbian mums specifically. So there's lots going on, but you can sign up as a healthcare professional as well in case you want to see any of the content that we have on there. And like I said, if you ever want to find out more about it, please get in touch with me. I put my email in the chat, and I think I popped in the little website, so go ahead.
I'd love to talk to you more, Mary, about because it's a bit of a black box in my mind, this kind of digital angle. I haven't given it as much thought as all of the other aspects.
Can I just come in a little bit with something Mary said, which I think is really quite salient in the modern era, and I'm somebody that's just had quite an active time on the campaign trail with the general election, and I think it's that isolation that a lot of families are now experiencing. I'm working from my home office here in West Suffolk, which has a very elderly population. Literally 60% of the population are aged over 55. So there are a lot of areas or villages and towns where whole streets of people are older people, and there are very few families, and those that there are do feel very, very isolated, because you do need obviously mutual aid and support, and that's what we're discussing today. And lots of areas that there isn't that. So you've got almost like the young people living, as you know, in some of the metropolitan city areas, and then in rural England, if you like, you've got quite an elderly population. So I think being a family in somewhere like West Suffolk, and I talked to lots of mums and dads about that, it's pretty isolating. A whole street, there's one or two families or just one family, because you can't generate the support that you probably need to be a mother or a father in that context.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Mark. Oh, Judith, you've got your hand up. Sorry, I didn't see that.
No, I'm just following on from what Mark was saying, which I absolutely agree with. We've been very fortunate working with generations working together in Scotland and linking generations Northern Ireland. We had some national lottery funding to develop a program called Creating Intergenerational Communities, and these are to create intergenerational community spaces, zones where all generations can come together and meet in a very relaxed way, but ensuring that there is something, rather than going to a community centre where you've got you can go to many faith halls, a church hall, a synagogue hall, a temple hall, a mosque, and you'll have groups meeting, but they meet in their own little pockets. And to actually have somebody who actually can create programs or create a space that is actually inclusive and brings everyone together, whatever their gender, whatever their age, so that it is accessible as well, and that there is equal benefit, is something that we really are working very much towards. And we're creating some quality indicators, which we will be then putting on the website as soon as we've finished the project, for everybody to see. So you can actually have these relationships, you can actually have these support networks across the UK, because we're working also with Wales.
That's brilliant, Judith. Thank you so much. Well, I think we've reached the end of our time. I've really loved this. I hope other people have enjoyed it.